I probably need to do a content warning on this one. We are going to be talking about rape. Like that just straight up, that is going to be the conversation in this video. If that is not for you, then there's over 750 other videos on the channel you are more than welcome to partake in that likely do not involve this particular subject. But if you are comfortable with that subject matter and are ready to continue forward, let's go ahead and do so. But before we do that, let's go ahead and do the fan art section. Not because I think that it's super appropriate for this particular video, but because I do need to keep that habit ingrained as hard as possible, and I'm nothing if not a creature of habit. So, let's go ahead and begin with me not setting up everything correctly like I should, because I had this all set up and then a thing happened. There we go. Now I've got everything ready. So, first of all, we have this first piece from Minimalize, now habitating. And honestly, I really like this art style. I've not really seen the same kind of shading that's done here that often, but it's actually really eye-catching, so I do like it. But I'm not here to judge art. I don't know why I decided to engage in judging art. We have another piece from 666, the anime cat 666, which is the... if we had an official sticker for the Cult of the Unblinking one, then this would probably be it. So, thank you very much for that. And finally, we have Greetings from the Unblinking One by Spooky Boy Ray. As always, thank you all for your fan art submissions. As always, they are greatly appreciated. If you want to submit fan art and you do want it to be shown on an episode, the best way to do so is drop in the Discord. It guarantees that I will actually be able to see them and put them on an episode. Fan art section, please don't throw them into the wrong section. All right. Now that we've gotten rid of the fun part, let's go ahead and get into the not-so-fun part. So, who here is familiar with a guy named Carlos Del Val? I might be mispronouncing that. I also largely don't care if I am, because, well, dude seems like kind of a monstrous individual. This is going to be another one of those episodes where our talking point is started because of a tweet, of all things, because Twitter is nothing if not a cesspool of toxicity, where we are able to pull the finest representations of human beings out of the muck. So, Carlos here has some wonderful advice about how to avoid getting raped. We're going to go through it real quickly, and then we're going to knock every single one of them down one by one. First of all is, don't dress like a slut. Conceal carry. Avoid walking by yourself. Marry strong men. Avoid nightclubs. Learn to fight. Be modest. And don't talk to random men. Evil men don't care about your oughts. Your father should have taught you all of this. Now, let's go ahead and begin with, I could poison the well on who Carlos is, but we're not going to do that yet. First, we are going to go through each of these one by one. So first of all, don't dress like a slut. I have been hearing this talking point for 25 years. Ever since I could understand what rape was, which was about when I was 5 or so. Again, I grew up in a bad neighborhood. But ever since I was old enough to understand what these things were, this is a talking point that I heard. I don't want to get into who it was, but one of my family members was raped at the age of 9. And if you think that a 9-year-old is dressing like a slut, then it's probably a problem with you, not anything else. But, all that aside, how you dress is not the problem. It is never the fault of you for dressing a certain way when someone else acts horrible. Shifting the blame from the rapist to the victim does not help. Also, I could go through a shit ton of pictures. In fact, I could. Real quick. This is what I was wearing Tell me I asked for it. This is a trend that happened a while back, and it is largely still here. People have been making fun of that trend, but we have stuff like this. This is an anecdote, however, this is representative of a lot of people's stories here. This is on Know Your Meme because, again, this turned into something later. But taking something like this. This is what I was wearing. Tell me I asked for it. I dare you. This is a trend that has happened for a reason. People will show them dressed in stuff that is definitely not slutty. Literally just pants, jeans, shirts, what have you. And do it to kind of show the point that it didn't matter how I was dressed. It mattered that somebody wanted to harm me. What I was or wasn't wearing did not factor into their decision to harm me. They were going to harm me regardless. Also, conceal carry. What people don't seem to realize, and I am an advocate for carrying weapons on you. I am an advocate for self-defense. But it's not going to magically stop rape. Because there's a problem. Concealed carry is one part of a formula of defending yourself. But when you are in a situation like that, there are 3 options that happen in your brain. Fight, flight, or freeze. And the majority of the time, if my memory is correct, freezing is what happens more often than not. And these are innate psychological responses to things. It would require tons of training to fix, and even then, it does not always happen. There are military personnel that still find themselves, even after hours and days and weeks of training, that still find themselves freezing in certain situations. So, having a weapon on you? Good idea. I agree. But again, the way this is framed is it is putting the onus on the victim. It was the victim's responsibility to not be raped, based on the framing here. Now, the next one is avoid walking by yourself. As a general safety measure, yeah, this is a fair bit of advice. But what kind of message is communicated here? Instead of focusing the message on men who would try to assault people and arguing that, hey, maybe they shouldn't, the argument here is that, no, the world is just evil, vile, and cruel, and you shouldn't be walking by yourself ever. Wouldn't it be better to couple this with trying to make a better world where people could walk by themselves without having to worry about this kind of shit? This is why we have so many conversations about rape culture. At least that's a thing that was happening years ago, and it still happens sometimes. It still happens a lot in feminist circles now. This is why. A lot of this argument literally just puts all the onus on the victim and avoids talking about the assailant. That's why this happens. This next one, marry a strong man. Rapist doesn't care who your husband is. I'm sorry, this idea that you, as the big strong guy, can be the Superman for her if she has gone to work and she's in a parking lot, I'm sorry, the fact that you are a big, strong man is not going to do anything. You're probably at home, or you're probably at work yourself. Why the fuck does the rapist care about you? This doesn't help anyone at all. Next one is avoiding nightclubs. Generally speaking, yeah, the nightlife can be a lot more dangerous than just going out in the daylight. However, telling people that they should avoid the nightlife if they don't want to get raped leads to this conversation, which I'm sure you've probably heard at some point in time in some manner or type. Person A gets raped or person A gets assaulted. Person B goes, well, you shouldn't have been out there in the first place. Well, you shouldn't have been there in the first place. I know that I've heard it told to people at least once or twice. That was back when I was in high school, and it's certainly increased more since I've become an adult living in the rural South. At the end of the day, you should be able to walk where you want. You should be able to go where you want. And nightclubs largely are places where you should be able to hang out. Now, there should definitely be a little PSA in here that it's not about avoiding nightclubs. Going into a nightclub is not the problem, generally speaking. There could be a problem with getting your drink drugged. So don't accept drinks from strangers. That is probably better advice than just avoiding the nightclub altogether. You should be able to go to a nightclub if you want to. The next one is learn to fight. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. While I am an advocate for people learning to fight, I bring up the point about fight, flight, and freeze. If you're going to freeze with a weapon, you're going to freeze with your fist. And in some situations, fighting back can turn it from a case of rape to a case of murder, depending on who the assailant is. There are plenty of survivors that will tell you that the only thing that caused them to survive their encounter was at a certain point just letting it end. Because fighting back would cause their assailant to get more aggressive, would cause them to hurt them more. This is again an attempt to blame the victim. Well, why didn't you fight back more? Because an angry rapist could kill you? Not everybody's in a position to fight back. Skillers in the chat points it out directly. Escalation can often lead to worse outcomes. This does not mean I'm saying don't fight back if you find yourself in a situation like this, but analyze it. Are you dealing with somebody who's mentally unhinged? If you fight back, what's the likelihood that you're going to get out? The next point is be modest. I'm sorry, but a woman's personal modesty is never going to be a factor in whether or not they're raped. This is just the don't dress like a slut argument repurposed. And again, it doesn't matter what someone's wearing. If somebody wants to do you harm, it's not because of what you're wearing. What you're wearing is just the excuse they're using in their head to rationalize what they're doing to you. It doesn't automatically mean that being modest would have stopped it from happening. Next one is don't talk to random men. So, Carlos would effectively be a random man in this instance. So I'm tempted to agree with this advice, because it would mean less women talking to dumbasses like Carlos. However, what the point is meant to show here is that all men are potential rapists. All men are problems. Don't talk to random men, because there's always a chance they could be a rapist. I don't like this framing either, because you've basically created a world where all women need to live in fear of men. Unless, of course, they've married a strong one, in which case they are granted nigh magical immunity, because all men are necessarily paladins who can grant their blessing of protection via way of their splooge, I guess. Then goes on to say that evil men don't care about your aughts. Your father should have taught you all of this. Again, I want to drill into this point. I do, but I've drilled into every other point here. Gendering the person who should have taught you X or Y lesson is fucking stupid. Your father's probably not the person, statistically likely, who's had to deal with potential instances of rape. So they're probably also not the person who should be giving you the advice here. Just saying. And let's see. When we go further into this particular thing, we see posts from him like, feminist men, the exact type of men who rape, want you unprotected. Now, please note that I'm someone who would definitely be considered a feminist, especially by this person's standards. And please note that I've argued for both carrying weaponry on you and also learning how to fight, so I don't fit into the latter category. Person goes, if I were a rapist who wanted to create a culture that makes it easier to rape women, I would advise them to dismiss Carlos's advice as victim blaming and mansplaining, and then tell them to helplessly blame men. Okay, so nobody is saying helplessly blame men. I am going to argue that rhetoric like Carlos's likely, more often than not, creates the world where more men are more likely to rape. However, I also pragmatically advocate that while living in that world, you should be able to have weapons on you. You should be able to protect yourself. But there's a lot of advice in here that's actually bullshit and doesn't change outcomes whatsoever. But maybe it's a good idea to look at Carlos Stilval as a person. See what type of individual this is. Because, well, he's got a bunch of advice. And I don't think any of it is good advice, mind you. But let's go ahead and take a look here. So, when we go and take a look at his link tree, we find ourselves a 90-day program. Now, I always wonder with people like this, are they trying to sell me something? Because people who are giving a lot of life advice like this tend to view themselves as gurus. And usually if you view yourself as a guru on the internet, you probably have something to sell people. And wouldn't you know it, we have, first of all, Carlos Stilval's The Optimized Warrior, the ultimate program to naturally increase testosterone levels in 90 days. So, trans men in my audience, could you, I believe Carlos has some very useful information for you, apparently. There were natural ways to increase your testosterone all along. And you can get this program for $40. $40 to be an optimized warrior. Are you tired of feeling like shit? Want to have more energy, sex drive, and strength? Jesus fucking Christ. I like how down here he says, if you have lack of motivation, anxiety, feel weak, low energy, low sex drive, fatigue, lack of focus, difficulty concentrating, man boobs, difficulty getting hard, trouble putting on muscle, easily get fat, mood swings, trouble sleeping, depression, or lack of enjoyment in your life. If you have one or more of these symptoms, you have low T. So everybody who suffers from anxiety, a real medical issue, has low T. People who feel weak, which means they might have hyperthyroidism, which could also lead to the getting fat or man boobs, they have low T. If you have difficulty concentrating, so maybe you have ADHD. No, it's not that. It's the low T. Anybody who's willing to sell you a single solution to multiple medical problems is selling you bullshit. It is always snake oil. If somebody is selling you a panacea, it is almost always fake. Then, of course, we have more shit he's trying to sell you. His Ancient Parasite Cleanse. The ultimate 6-week program to eliminate parasites and live a healthy, symptom-free life. Symptoms of what? Symptoms of what? There's gotta be an illness here. If I've got symptoms, there's some illness that these symptoms are coming from. So, what's the symptoms of? Also, I'm curious. Okay, so that is the same thing. Do you want to tackle the root cause, not just the symptoms? Root cause of what? Symptoms of what? There's a key feature in a ton of pseudoscience, and it is trying to remove toxins from your body. This is a thing we get from not a colonoscopy, but colon cleansing, like colonics. They tend to argue that there are toxins prevalent in your body, and if only we can flush them out by drinking various juices or going on a 6-week program, you'll be able to fix all the problems in your body. Goes on to say, maybe you have one of the following: acne or itchiness, brain fog, dandruff, allergies, intermittent headaches, constipation, sudden weight gain or loss, dark areas under your eyes, irritable bowel syndrome, bad taste in your mouth, chronic fatigue, yeast infections, gas and bloating. If you have one or more of these symptoms, you know, everybody has one of these at some point in their life. If you have any of these symptoms, you have parasites. He doesn't tell you what parasites. You just have parasites. You just have them. He says, don't be surprised. Almost everyone does. Our ancestors knew how important it is to cleanse. Hell, they did it every year. They knew that if you're not getting rid of your gut's parasites, they will steal the nutrients and food you eat, leaving you vulnerable to sickness and disease. Hippocrates saying disease begins in the gut, using this as a quote to try to argue literally anything is not going to get you anywhere. So we know who we're dealing with. We're dealing with a pseudoscience peddler. Because, again, if you're going to show literally every symptom that somebody could potentially fall under, and then say it's all caused by one thing, I could sit here and do an actual Dangers of Woo style video debunk on here if I had more time. Maybe a little more preparation. But instead, I will just say this. It's good to know that some of the best advice on the internet is coming from such a reputable pseudoscience salesman. If he's selling you bullshit over here, then what do you think all this is? Anyway, with all that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed that little breakdown of our particularly high T individual who definitely has all the answers. He's got everything figured out, guys. It's all parasites and low T. All of it. Dude's a fucking joke. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let me know what you think in the chat if you are watching over on Twitch. And if you are watching over on Twitch, why aren't you already followed? You should probably be doing that if you haven't already. With all that said, though, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below if you're watching this over on YouTube. Skill Loser, thank you very much for following. And as always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here.